It's strange how a single sentence, not shouted, not violent, can bring your entire life to its knees. The morning light slid between the slats of the old blinds in my office, casting sharp angles across the architectural plans that covered my desk. I remember thinking how clean it all looked. Orderly, predictable, lines intersecting where they should, just like I had built my life. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 41. I've been the lead structural engineer at Langford and Keene for a decade, though it feels longer. It's the kind of career that demands everything. Your evenings, your weekends, your marriage if you're not careful. My office sat on the top floor of a glass and steel tower in downtown Raleigh, a view of the city I helped design. Funny how easy it is to build something that looks solid from the outside. That morning, I was recalculating the lateral load ratios on a hospital expansion when Jocelyn Pierce, our project coordinator, knocked and stepped in. She had that expression, the one people wear when they know the news isn't good, but they've already accepted it. "Dan," she said, holding her tablet like a shield. "The Parkwood client wants to change the foundation specs. Again." I didn't even look up. "Third time this quarter?" "Third time this week," she corrected, her voice tight. I nodded, mostly to myself. "Schedule a walkthrough tomorrow. I'll explain why moving concrete isn't the same as dragging a file on a screen." "It's already on the calendar," she said and paused. "You look exhausted." That made me look at her. "I'm fine." "When's the last time you made it home before 10? Her question landed harder than it should have, because I couldn't answer, not honestly. The truth was, the days had begun to bleed together. Late meetings, client calls, draft revisions that somehow couldn't wait. But what bothered me more than the question was the follow-up. "Melanie must be tired of eating alone." Melanie, my wife. We'd been together since college. 12 years of memories. Weekend trips, small apartments, long arguments, quiet mornings with coffee and no words. Lately, though, it had all turned into a kind of autopilot. We spoke in schedules, grocery lists, who'd be home first to walk Cooper, our golden retriever. "Mel understands," I told Jocelyn, more out of habit than conviction. She nodded but didn't look convinced. "Just don't forget what matters outside these walls." She left, and I tried to work, but her words stayed behind. Melanie had always said she respected my job. She'd say it when I missed dinner, when I came home with cement dust on my pants and a blueprint in my bag. She meant it, or used to. Lately, something had shifted. Her smile didn't linger. Her hugs felt like placeholders. That afternoon, my assistant buzzed through. "Mr. Mercer, Mr. Grayson wants to see you." I froze a little. My boss, Conrad Grayson, wasn't the type to casually drop by. If he called you up, it was for one of two reasons: promotion or problem. Either way, it meant something big. As I rode the elevator to the executive floor, I tried to steady myself. The hum of fluorescent lights above, the soft buzz of city life below. It all felt muted, distant, like I was walking into something I hadn't prepared for. Grayson's office was everything mine wasn't. Mahogany shelves, gold-rimmed frames, and leather chairs you sank into whether you wanted to or not. He smiled when I entered, that smile people give when they've already decided something for you. "Dan," he said, gesturing to the seat across from him. "Come in, sit." "How's the hospital expansion coming?" he asked, more pleasantry than interest. "Under budget on schedule," I answered. "Of course it is," he grinned. "You're the best we've got." That flattery hit wrong, too warm, too timed. "I want you leading the Belridge Estates development. 24 luxury homes, gated, private. The city's elite. You'll be the face of the project." It was a career-making offer, and yet something in his voice itched at me. "There's a substantial pay bump," he added, 30%, plus bonuses. And then, like he'd rehearsed it, he said, "Melanie must be thrilled." I blinked. "I haven't told her." He chuckled. Of course, but I'm sure she'll love it. She's refined, social, I've heard she's been mingling at some of the city's more exclusive events. That stopped me cold. I didn't know you followed my wife's social calendar. He waved it off. You know how it is. People talk. But I didn't know. Melanie had mentioned a women's club once, something about fundraisers at the Grantham Club. She'd been vague, said it gave her something to do while I was saving buildings from themselves. I smiled, said thank you, shook his hand. But I left with a weight in my chest I couldn't name. Later that night, just as I was packing up to head home, my phone buzzed. A message from Grayson. Just one line. You weren't invited. You'd object to your wife sleeping with us. Everything I thought I understood about my life tilted, and suddenly, nothing felt structurally sound anymore. I stared at the message for a long time. The words glared back at me, simple and undeniable. No punctuation, no apology, just a cold punch of suggestion that made my throat dry. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake, a misdirected text, some internal office joke gone horribly wrong. But the phrasing, your wife, wasn't vague. It wasn't funny. It was targeted. And it shook something loose in me I didn't even know was fragile. Seconds later, another message arrived. Ignore that. Sent to the wrong person. Right. Like it was that easy. Like you could unspill something like that with a correction. I closed my laptop, shoved the blueprint tubes into my bag, and walked out of that office with the weight of my entire marriage hanging on one message. The drive home felt longer than it should have. Streetlights passed like metronome ticks. I watched the familiar neighborhoods roll by through the windshield and found myself wondering what else I had missed while I was buried in design specs and concrete stress charts. When I pulled into our driveway, Melanie's SUV was already there, porch light on, as always. Our house, a colonial-style place just outside the city, looked the same. Perfect, even. Too perfect. She was in the living room when I stepped inside, curled on the couch, magazine in hand, a half-full glass of Pinot on the side table. She looked up and smiled the way she always did, like nothing had changed, like the floor hadn't just dropped out from under us. You're early, she said, folding the magazine onto her lap. Everything all right? I nodded. Long day. Grayson offered me the Bell Ridge project. Her eyes lit up. She sat up straighter. Dan, that's incredible. Yeah, I said, watching her. He also mentioned he's seen you at events lately. The Grantham Club? Oh, that, she said quickly, brushing her hair behind her ear. Just charity stuff. A women's initiative thing. Fundraisers, mostly. What kind? She hesitated, just for a blink, but I saw it. Planning committees, silent auctions, that sort of thing. Her wine glass trembled ever so slightly as she took a sip. I sat down across from her, watching her face like it was a blueprint I was trying to decode. I didn't know we could afford Grantham, I said carefully. She laughed. Too fast. Too light. I'm not a member. One of the other women sponsors me, a friend of a friend, Natalie Preston. Her husband owns those upscale car dealerships, remember? I didn't. And I knew she was lying. Maybe not about the name, but about something deeper. The rehearsed tone, the misplaced calm. I'd worked with enough dishonest developers to recognize practiced storytelling. How often do you go there? She looked at me, then away. Maybe twice a month, sometimes more. Depends on the events. She crossed the room and touched my arm, gentle, like she was trying to steer the conversation somewhere else. You've never been this curious about my schedule before, she said, smiling like it was a joke. Is everything okay? That's when I realized something painful. I had never needed to ask. I'd just trusted her, implicitly, completely. And now I couldn't. That night she went upstairs early, said she was tired. I told her I had work to do, and stayed downstairs in my home office, lights off, phone screen glowing in the dark like some kind of cursed artifact. The message was still there. You weren't invited. You'd object to your wife sleeping with us. I read it again and again, my mind working in circles, trying to disprove it like a faulty beam calculation. Who was us? Why had he sent it? And why did a part of me already believe it? By 1 a.m., I'd made up my mind. There was only one place to get answers, and it wasn't inside these walls. After she disappeared into the hallway, I expected to hear the creak of stairs, the sound of the bathroom light flicking on upstairs, the usual rhythm of our nights. But it never came. 10 minutes passed, then 20. When I finally stepped out of my office, the second floor was dark, and the front door was slightly ajar. At first I thought I'd imagined it, but no, her shoes were gone, her coat, the keys that usually hung on the little hook by the door weren't there either. She hadn't gone to bed. She'd left. No note. No, I'll be back soon. Just a quiet disappearance, like she knew I wouldn't ask. I stood there in the silence of our house, barely breathing, trying to decide if I should let this go, chalk it up to stress, to something innocent.
But that message.
You weren't invited. You'd object to your wife sleeping with us. It wasn't the kind of thing you could forget. So I grabbed my coat and left. No lights, no noise, just followed the same route she must have taken moments earlier. She didn't know I saw the look in her eyes when I mentioned the Grantham Club. That flicker, just for a second, like a candle almost blown out. That's what led me there. The drive felt surreal. My hands stayed at 10 and 2 like I was on autopilot, but my mind was already racing ahead. What would I find? What did I even hope to? The Grantham Club was still awake when I arrived. A long, curved driveway led up to its arched entrance, lit tastefully with warm lights and flagstone lamps. But the front wasn't where things happened. Not the kind of things that sent late-night messages from a man like Grayson. I parked in the shadows, a few blocks down, walked the rest on foot, heart thudding in a rhythm I didn't recognize. From behind the hedge line, I saw her car, parked near the side entrance, like it belonged there, like she belonged there. I didn't rush in, didn't make a scene. Instead, I moved along the service road until I found a break in the gate, half covered by ivy. A delivery van had just pulled out and left it open. I slipped through. The building's side wing was quieter, older, less polished, but there was music, faint, expensive jazz, and murmured laughter. Real laughter, relaxed, intimate, the kind that doesn't happen at board meetings or charity planning sessions. I followed the sound toward a corridor with French doors. The curtains were half drawn, but I could see enough. What I saw stripped away the last pieces of denial. Inside, a long table set for 12, low light, open wine, and her, Melanie, dressed in a backless gown I didn't recognize, sitting beside Grayson, her hand brushing his shoulder as she whispered something in his ear. He laughed. And then she laughed too, not forced, not polite, comfortable, like they'd done this before, like this was routine. I felt the air leave my lungs. I didn't burst in, didn't call her name. What was there to say? She was already exactly where she wanted to be. Instead, I took out my phone, captured what I could through the glass, just enough to prove to myself that I wasn't going crazy, that my instincts, the ones I'd spent weeks ignoring, were dead on. I left the way I came, quiet, unnoticed. When I got home, the house was still empty, her coat still gone, no headlights in the driveway. So I sat in the kitchen, hands cold, phone screen burning a hole in my pocket. And I waited. Because now I didn't just need the truth. I needed to know how long she'd been hiding it in plain sight. She came back just after 3. The sound of her car door closing outside broke the silence. I didn't move. I was sitting at the kitchen table, lights off, a half cup of unhutched coffee cold in front of me, my jacket still on, my hands folded. When the front door opened, I listened. No keys jingling, no soft, "Hey," from the hallway. Just the gentle click of the lock behind her, then the hush of heels on tile. She didn't expect me to be awake. I heard her hesitate when she saw the kitchen light was off. Probably thought she'd gotten away with it, that she could slip back upstairs and I'd never know she'd left at all. I let the silence drag a little longer before I said, "Long night?" She froze. I didn't have to see her to feel it. The kind of stillness that isn't surprise, it's fear dressed as confusion. Then came the performance. "Oh, Dan," she said, trying to laugh. "You scared me. I didn't think you'd still be up." I stood and flicked on the kitchen light. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before. Emerald green slit high on the leg. Her makeup was slightly smudged, hair pinned up with care but now slipping loose. She looked expensive, manufactured, and completely unfamiliar. "Where were you?" I asked. She blinked. "I told you. The fundraiser planning. It went late. One of the ladies offered to drive me home, but I didn't want to leave my car, so—" "You were at the Grantham Club." That stopped her cold. "I saw your car," I added, "and I saw you, through the window." Something shifted in her face, a recalculation, a quiet scramble behind the eyes. She didn't deny it. She just dropped her gaze and said, "Dan, please let me explain." I wanted to ask her why she thought I'd never notice, why she thought this kind of betrayal could be dressed up as charity work. But all I managed was, "How long?" A pause, then, "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." She stepped forward, slow, like she was afraid I might break, or maybe like she might. "I started going just to get out of the house. I was lonely. You were always working. I didn't—" She faltered. "At first, it was just lunches, dinners, events." "With Grayson?" She flinched. "No, not at first. He sponsors the club. He's connected to everyone there." "And eventually?" I pressed. "Did you and him become connected too?" She didn't answer. Didn't have to. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, went straight to my office, pulled out the folder I'd prepared the night before. Printed photos, screenshots, time-stamped videos. Not all of it damning on its own, but put together it told the truth. I laid it all on the kitchen table and sat back down. She didn't come closer, just stood there staring at the evidence of everything she thought I'd never see. "I didn't want it to be like this," she said finally, voice shaking. "It just happened." "No," I said quietly. "Accidents happen. This was a choice." I looked at her and realized something gut-wrenching. I wasn't angry the way I thought I'd be. I was hollow, like someone had turned off the gravity inside me. I stood, my chair scraping the floor behind me. "You should go upstairs. Get some sleep. We'll talk tomorrow." She looked at me, searching for the version of me that might forgive her. But he wasn't there anymore. He'd left the moment I saw her touch another man like he was her home. She walked out without another word. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed at the table, staring at the pile of truth in front of me. By morning, I knew exactly what I had to do. She didn't speak to me when she came down that morning. Not right away. She moved around the kitchen like everything was normal. Started the kettle, opened the blinds, poured cereal she wasn't going to eat. I sat at the table with my coffee, watching her, saying nothing. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I needed to choose the right moment and the right words. Eventually, she broke the silence. "You're quiet today," she said, not looking at me. I gave a small nod. Didn't sleep much. She hesitated for just a second, then smiled faintly. "I didn't either." I studied her face, the same woman I'd shared a life with, the same one who came home at 3 in the morning, heels in hand, perfume still clinging to her skin, who'd lied to my face for God knows how long. And suddenly I realized, she thought I was still deciding how much I knew. I set my coffee down. "I need to step out for a few hours." She finally looked at me then, a flicker of something, suspicion maybe. "Work?" "Not exactly." I grabbed my keys and left before she could ask more. My first stop was downtown, a small office above a law firm where a friend of mine from the city council once told me I'd find someone who solves problems quietly. The name on the frosted glass door was Jack Morris, former investigator for the city, now freelance, gray hair, calm eyes, a voice like gravel soaked in coffee. "You've been recommended," I said, and I need answers. He gestured for me to sit, then listened as I told him everything. The messages, the club, what I saw last night. I even showed him the short video clip. Melanie laughing beside Grayson, champagne glass in hand, like she didn't have a husband in the world. When I finished, he just nodded slowly like he'd heard versions of this story before. "Can you follow her?" I asked. Discreetly. "I need proof, not theories." "I can," he said, "but you'll need more than pictures if you're thinking long-term, especially if this goes legal." "I'm thinking about everything," I told him, "and I want to do this right." We signed the paperwork. He'd start that evening. On the way out, I sat in the car for a long while before making my next move. Not out of hesitation, out of mourning. Because once you speak certain truths aloud, like my wife has been lying to me or she may be involved with more than just one man, there's no way back to who you were before. My second stop was a law office. I didn't have an appointment, but when I explained the situation to the receptionist, simply, clearly, without theatrics, she told me the senior attorney was free in 20 minutes. Her name was Jennifer Wells, mid-50s, crisp suit, the kind of woman who didn't waste words. She asked direct questions and expected honest answers. I gave her both. She reviewed my statement silently, then folded her hands. "If what you saw last night is even half of what's happening," she said, "you need to begin collecting everything. Financial records, joint accounts, timeline of her behavior." "She doesn't know I'm here," I said. "She will soon." We discussed options, the process, what could be contested and what couldn't. And by the time I walked out of that office, the first layer of protection around my life was already being built. Not revenge, defense. Because if Melanie thought I would collapse in silence, she didn't understand the one rule I live by. Never build anything on unstable ground. And now that I'd seen what was underneath my marriage, I knew exactly what to do. By the time I got home, she was in the garden, watering plants she hadn't touched in weeks. I watched her from the kitchen window for a moment. The rhythm of her movements, the way she avoided looking toward the house. She knew something had shifted, and I think she was trying to act normal before I confirmed it. When she came back inside, she started talking, fast, nervous, like she was trying to outrun a storm that was already overhead. "Dan, I've been thinking. Maybe we should take some time. Just us. Go somewhere quiet. The lake house, maybe? You've been so tense lately. And I know I've been distant." I let her finish. Then I said gently but clearly, "I went to see a lawyer today." She froze. I continued, "And I hired a private investigator this morning. He'll start tonight." She didn't speak, didn't blink, just stood there like she was trying to decide whether to fight, cry, or run. So I made it easy for her. "I don't need an explanation anymore," I said. "What I need is the truth. Documented, verifiable. And when I have it, we'll separate everything. Accounts, property, memories, with the same precision I use at work." Her lips parted. No sound came out. "I'm not doing this out of anger," I added. "I'm doing it because you made a decision. Repeatedly. And now I'm making mine." "You think this was easy for me?" she finally said, voice cracking. "You were never here. I was alone every night." "And you filled that space with secrets," I said, "instead of honesty." She collapsed into a chair, head in her hands. "I didn't want to lose you," she whispered. "You already did," I said quietly, and I meant it. The rest of the evening passed in silence. She didn't pack. I didn't ask her to, not yet. The law would sort that out in time. I spent the night in the guest room again, the door closed, her perfume faintly lingering in the sheets, not from love, but from habit. That's when I realized something. I wasn't broken, not really. Because what she shattered wasn't me. It was the version of my life I'd drawn in pencil, and now I had the chance to redraw it in ink. The next morning I woke early, made black coffee, stared out the window at the pale sky. And for the first time in weeks, I could breathe without wondering what I'd missed. This story didn't end with a fight. It ended with clarity, and the quiet decision to start over. Some structures collapse, others are demolished for a reason, but either way, when the dust settles, what you build next is entirely up to you.